Hello, Leo Kale here. In this video, we'll see if I can create a loose and expressive and romantic watercolor painting of this rural Pennsylvania farm scene using just one hue. In addition to this watercolor monochrome demonstration, I will give you a snapshot of my in-person watercolor workshops. This presentation will be about the importance of thinking in terms of four values when you create a watercolor painting.
Professional photographers use a tool like this to gauge and evaluate grayscale value in their black and white photography. A watercolor artist must simplify this broad set of potential values into roughly 4 discernible levels. We must structure our painting into 4 sets of values. Use too few values and you'll get a weak or anemic looking painting. If we give no consideration at all with respect to limited value delineation, it is very easy to end up producing a soft or muddy painting, a term often used to describe a poor watercolor painting. To obtain a dynamic watercolor painting, it is a good idea to express your vision in 4 discernible values, executed in 4 methodical layers. This will hopefully yield a painting of what I call snap, crackle, and pop. A good analogy is a string quartet, each musician representing one of the 4 key values. The music they produce is much more enjoyable if all 4 instruments contribute. Value is managed by the water to pigment ratio of your mix. The lightest values result from a high percentage of water to pigment ratio. Conversely, dark values require little to no water added to the pigment. By removing the additional complexity of multiple hues in a painting, it becomes much easier to think in terms of 4 value levels. In this painting exercise, you can see that I've broken down this scene into a monochromatic painting using just 4 value levels. Starting out with the paper is the highest key value, and then working my way to the darkest darks. So now let's take a look at this same painting executed in color. The same process applies. You think in 4 levels of value throughout the painting process. If you really truly want to learn to create a dynamic watercolor paintings, this is a great thing. You need to think about putting away your color for a while and challenge yourself for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 paintings to utilize just one hue. This will really help you learn to paint in these 4 values, and by removing the complexity of color from the process, you can now really focus on your value delineation. You can focus on the edges between shapes. You can focus on your composition, your story. But removing color from the process will really help you to get the hang of this medium. Color is a whole nother animal, and I will do another video on simplified color theory down the road. But for now, let's learn to use just one hue to create a dynamic painting. Okay, so I'm starting off with a large squirrel hair mop. I always start off with this type of brush because it allows me to lay down big washes of hue, of pigment without really any brush marks. So a really important tool for this initial process. At this early stage of the painting process, I'm really looking for 2 things. I'm looking for the lightest middle values in the scene, and I'm also very keen to protect my the white shape. In this case, the front face of the barn will be mostly white of the paper. So really, the only thing you're worried about at this stage is protecting the white shapes. Everything else will just be a consistent, translucent, soft wash of this light middle value, and that's achieved by the water to pigment ratio of this raw umber that I'm using. You'll see in the key at the bottom right of the video here. This is the value that I'm mentally focused on right now. Okay, cruising along now, I am looking for some of the shadows that are created by some of the maybe trees on the right-hand side of the road. Right now, I'm trying to suggest this metal roof of the barn. I'm not sure if that'll hold up at the end, but it just seemed like maybe the edges of the roof would catch some light. So moving along here, I just continue to look for the light values in the scene. Actually, I'm looking for the darks as well, because anything that will be darker, you can go ahead and put down now, because you're going to make it darker in later steps. So if there's a dark area in the painting, go ahead and paint it in with this light middle value, fully knowing that you're going to come back and paint darker over it. So working my way down the painting, constantly thinking about the translucency of this initial layer. So translucency really is a function of how much water there is to the pigment. So that's a way to think about this first layer, is think about it in terms of translucency. Will the light penetrate this layer of pigment and then bounce back out? So right now I'm looking for shadows being cast by maybe trees and objects on the right side of the page. Sometimes you have to use your imagination. You have to picture where the light is coming from and where there might be shadows. So maybe they don't always show up in the reference photograph, but again, use your imagination to suggest where shadows might occur. This also helps to create volume. So adding shadows against the light will help to suggest volume in trees and the road and whatnot. Okay, having put down that initial middle light value, it's now time for the third value in the sequence, and this is what I call the middle darks. This value is created by using now less water and more pigment. So your pigment to water ratio is going up. There's more pigment to the water, and this is how you darken a pigment value. So now I'm simply looking at the reference photograph for some of these darker middle values, and I'm just kind of spotting them in with a kind of a pointed round brush here. Doing a little bit of negative painting here. I believe there's some fence posts, so painting in between those to try to reveal some of those shapes. Doing a little bit of scumbling to suggest some trees or weeds. Doing a little positive painting, putting the shadow on the underside of that barn roof, and adding some of the shadows that are created by some of the weeds and whatnot that are actually growing in the side of this old farm barn. Okay, doing a little bit of splatter here to suggest small trees on the left-hand side of the barn. So we keep on going now, looking for maybe some smaller details of, but always looking for these middle values. And if they're going to be darker later, it doesn't matter, because we can come back over them and make them even darker. This is actually a good way to work, because you can see how your painting will gradually build. So by going ahead and using these middle values for shapes and areas that are going to be darker, it helps to guide you in the process. So don't be afraid to put down this middle value if you know that you're going to make a shape darker in the future. It really just helps to make the process easier, really. So now you'll notice me spotting in some figures in the painting. Obviously, they were not in the reference photograph, but this is where you make a scene better. This is a really an important idea in watercolor, is to make a scene more romantic by adding life to. It also adds a story to your painting. So having completed this third phase of our painting, it's now time for the fourth value. And you'll see here I'm kind of showing you how these values relate to one another. To achieve a rich dark like this, you're going to work in what they call a dry brush manner. Very, very little water, if any, added to the pigment. So now I'm looking for the darkest darks in the scene. Dark values tend to come forward in a watercolor painting, so keep that in mind. You're also now working in much more of an opaque manner. The disparity that you can create in a watercolor painting by contrasting opaque shapes against light or very translucent areas of the painting is really a nice thing, and really adds depth to your painting. I've dropped down to a small detail brush at this point, and really I'm just looking for small details that I can punch in with these dark values. The term punching in, I don't know where that came from, but I feel it's very appropriate, because that's how I think. I think about that. I'm punching up the painting. I'm punching in these darks. Notice how I save the figures kind of for last in the process. By using the darkest darks in a painting, these figures are really going to come forward in the scene and help create depth overall. This idea or concept of painting in four distinct values in 4 sequential layers is all well and good, and it's a great rule of thumb for painting a watercolor. However, in reality, many times you need to go back and maybe re-strengthen the dark middle values. Watercolor dries back about 50%. So you may have put them in earlier thinking that they were correct, but once they dry, they lighten so much that you may need to go back and strengthen certain aspects of the painting. And this is what I continue to do at this point, is to look for shadows that maybe should be deeper to help create more contrast within the painting. Here I'm using a big squirrel mop, using the point. I felt like there was not enough disparity around some of the shapes. So this is where you go back and you darken a value to better reveal certain shapes. So a little bit of dark middle value splatter here to better suggest the trees growing next to the barn. Using a small squirrel hair mop here to better suggest some of the trees in the woods behind the barn. So at the very end of each painting, I generally come back and I look for highlights. So the highlights could have been the white of the paper, but it's sometimes impossible to protect these small highlights. So there's nothing wrong with coming back at the end of the process and suggesting a few highlights, especially on your figures, to help draw attention to them. Okay, so we've reached the end of this monochrome watercolor painting demonstration. I hope you can see how structuring your painting in 4 value layers can really help create a painting that's not muddy, a painting that has good contrast and what I like to call snap, crackle, and pop. Monochromatic watercolor is really a genre unto itself. If you search the web, you'll find spectacular watercolor paintings by various world-class watercolor artists. So I believe strongly that to really learn to create dynamic watercolor art, it would be well advised to focus on monochromatic painting for quite a while until you really get the hang of the values and creating paintings that are not muddy. If you've enjoyed and gained some knowledge from this video, please hit the like button if you would. This will really help me grow this channel. Be sure to subscribe as well to see all future free watercolor tutorials. Hit the little bell icon to be alerted about new videos. I also love hearing from my viewers. Please leave a comment or ask any questions you'd like. I'll do my best to respond to all comments. If you know of anyone interested in the arts, especially watercolor, please share this link with them. Thanks for watching.